Welcome to Your School Journey, where we dive into the topics that matter in education today. We're here to help parents understand the conversations happening in schools and offer tips to support your child's learning along the way.
Today we're joined in the studio by Dan Miller, Deputy Principal and Head of Senior School for Emmanuel College, as well as Dave Runge, Co-founder and Director at Future Schools. It's great to have both of you in the studio today.
Great to be here. Thanks, Mel.
Good to be with you.
So listen, when I think of the future, I'm thinking of hoverboards and flying cars. I'm thinking of Elon Musk releasing an army of robots and all those kind of things. So, Dave, what is a future school?
That's a really interesting question, and I feel in some ways a little loaded because I could try and answer that in a few sentences or a couple of lines and maybe not get close to even giving you an appropriate response. But when I think about a future school, I think about a number of elements. The first thing is I think about a school that's incredibly student-centered, where we're making decisions in the best interests of young people and ensuring that what we do is supporting their growth and development in this world. I also think of a school that supports young people to have meaningful contribution in the world, to do things that are of value, both for themselves, but also for the community and the people around them. The other thing that comes to mind for me when I think about these future schools, and certainly the schools that I work with both here and internationally, is they have this ability to be quite adaptive. They can evolve, they can change, they can iterate. And certainly we see that in these schools around the world that describe themselves as more future orientated.
So we've got adaptive schools, we've got things that are student-centred. Why do you think it's time that we actually change the game as far as schools concerned?
I think there's a number of reasons. I've been in some great conversations today around this concept of passive resistance. I'm seeing a lot of young people in our schools who aren't playing up, right? They're not making a big scene, but they're not deeply engaged. They're not deeply engaged in their learning. They're not deeply connected to what's playing out in their world. And I think that we really need to bring those people back in, wrap around them and ensure that they find real meaning in what they're doing at school. So for no other reason, I think that's really important. We also know that academic outcomes have been declining for a period of time globally. So there's been a trend toward declining academic outcomes. And we're seeing a massive growth in well-being, mental health issues that I think we need to really start to pay attention to. So I think it's a real requirement that we think through how do we deal with those situations that are playing out in our schooling system?
Okay, so we're looking at students that purposeful kind of environment. It's a different environment to say when we went to school. What kind of differences do you think we would see in a future school as opposed to when we went to school?
Certainly in the schools that I'm engaged with that would describe themselves as more future focused or future orientated, we see high levels of engagement, which is the opposite to that passive resistance I was talking about. We see high levels of agency and autonomy, where young people are invited into forging and framing their own educational experience. So those two things are definitely seen in these schools that are more future orientated.
So Dan, over to you. That sounds like a big job to actually change the way people would be thinking about schooling and moving it to a place where there is more agency with students and they are more engaged, they're more motivated. What kind of things do you think need to be put in place to make those kind of things happen?
Yeah, well, we're right at the start of this journey, right? Thinking about what this actually looks like for our students here at this school. To answer the question, it's about how do we increase the level of meaning in that schooling experience for the students. Now, what might that look like? Could look like a whole range of things. But one of the things that we certainly really want to explore is the idea of student choice. How do we recognize that they're all different? They're not the same. They don't all learn the same way. They don't all have the same interests. There are different things that motivate them. So how do we design a school that's going to enable our students to explore their passions, their interests, and to really build deep, rich, robust knowledge? And one of the ways we want to do that is through exploring choice. So that's starting, for example, in our year 11 and 12 space by offering new subjects like philosophy and reason, religion and ethics in year 10 to actually accelerate that QCE and get that early engagement in that process and diversify their subject offerings. And then we can start looking at things like electives. What can we do to play around in that space to give our students more options?
That's brilliant. So Dave, as you've travelled around, you've probably seen lots of bright spots, lots of examples of where there is engagement, there is motivation. Could you give us a couple of ideas about what students are now doing in schools where they are engaged, they are motivated?
Okay, so there's a couple of things that we see, and I'm thinking about some schools in particular. We certainly see, to Dan's point, young people more engaged in choice and decision-making around their educational experience, deeply in relationship, deeply relational to their teachers. Yep. So not only are they making choices, but they're making choices in a really profound way alongside the educators, the experienced and really important educators that we have in our schools. Yep. So this is a team sport, if you like. So those two things are playing out. The other thing that I'm seeing more and more is young people working on things that matter to them. So I'm thinking of some schools in particular where young people are solving complex problems. They're doing social equity work. They're solving problems in their local community. They're engaged with the local business holders. So those sorts of things are becoming more and more mainstream, where the boundaries of the school are increasingly becoming porous, and young people are not only learning inside the school, but outside the school as well. And we see learning through that holistic lens.
It sounds like the kids are receiving quite a lot of fulfillment by engaging in those kind of activities.
I would absolutely suggest yes. And not only fulfillment at a personal level, but I think the idea that they're adding value to the world is increasingly really important for young people. But they want to feel like they're contributing to something bigger and beyond themselves. And I actually think that's a really important thing for our societies and our populations at large.
So we want to kind of scale that up across the board, right? What kind of sacred cows have you encountered in the education system that maybe need to be shot, for want of a better word?
I'm not sure I'd go that far, but there are a couple of things that act as inhibitors or get in the way a lot of the time. And one of them is grades, right, and our devotion to assessment. Right, that is one of the things that we see perpetually getting in the way of the type of innovation that we've been talking to and discussing today. Another thing is, and I wrote about this in a recent paper, the idea of the worldviews or the lived experience of parents and adults in the lives of young people, and the fact that our experience at school might have looked quite different to the one that we're describing today. All right, so how do we liberate ourselves from our past impressions of what school is or what it was, and actually move into 2024 or beyond and think about what school can become? Right, so those two things play out. You have these grades and assessment at one end, and you have the lived experience or worldviews of adults in relationship with young people that can act as an inhibitor or a weight, if you like.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, and related to the idea of the grades being the focus. Like, what a lot of our students say, why are you learning this? It's because they want to get that great grade. That's what they want. They want to please their parents. They do. They want to feel that sense of pride and achievement in what they've done. But again, they're not. Well, what's the learning beyond that? So I think the sacred cow in there might be that the goal of school is to get great grades or to achieve really well. And I would say that that's part of the story, but is that really the complete story? And for us here at Emmanuel, we have a really strong focus on character development, like who you are. And Dave has talked there about these really deep senses of accomplishment and achievement when students are actually solving problems of value, when they actually see that it's not just about going through the steps, going through the motions here until I graduate, and then I'll go and do something. It's about actually actively contributing now. So we have some of the best events I've seen here at the school are things like our concerts that we run, in the performing arts space, or some of the great sport victories, things like that, things where the students are actively doing something with their knowledge and skill and producing something of beauty and value that they are really proud of. Or I think about musicals, they're another highlight of our school, and they're just amazing productions, really high quality, and the students are just thriving in that. So how do we tap that and make that the focus of learning rather than just the grade?
That's a great question. There's a lot of entrenched ideas that have been going on for over 100 years now in education, and there's a lot of change that we want to move into. And my question really is for both of you, how do you move the needle or change the game there?
One of the things I think to do is to really speak to the hearts of our children, of our parents, of our teachers, to really look into our hearts and say, what is this really all about? Like, what are we really trying to do? Is it really about learning the rock cycle? I'm a geologist, background trained. You can tell that's what I do. Is that really what school's about? Is it about learning those things, or is it about Is it about more making a difference in the world? Is it about shaping me as a person so that I can go and have that impact? And I think that's where we start, or one of the places to start. It's with those worldviews, those views of the teachers, of the students, the parents, about what it's all about. And we've had really rich conversation here when we've run focus groups with our students and with our teachers, and these things just naturally come out. Teachers believe that there's more to school than just the grades and ticking off curriculum outcomes. The students believe there's more than that. Our parents want more than that. So having that conversation, putting it out there, that's the start of where to go next, I think.
I describe this, Dan's talking to a point that I often talk about as collective sense making. Like, how can we collectively evolve and make sense of the world as it is now, the world that we're going to be shaping in the future, and what do young people need here and now in order to be fulfilled and engaged and deeply immersed in this thing that we call learning? So when we start there, when we start with young people, when we start with what the world needs, when we start with understanding each other's perspective and sense making around that, we can really start to propel into the future and make the sorts of transitions that you're describing.
That's great. And that kind of helps segue into our parent audience. So we've got an audience of parents out there. They're hearing what you're saying. They're saying, this is great. This is a real transformation for, what could happen in my child's world. And in the next few years, I imagine there's more and more of this kind of conversation that will be happening, more and more that schools will be changing. And I guess my question is, what are some conversations that you can have with your child about their learning that align with this future-focused way of thinking?
I always start with, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? What motivates you? So these are the questions that I ask my children about their learning experience, about being a student in a school. And then I go further than that and I say, how can you take that and add value to the world? How can you contribute to something beyond yourself? And I find that conversation, opening up that dialogue, is incredibly rich and fulfilling for a young person, because that's the story they want to tell. They actually want to see themselves as part of something bigger, as I said earlier. And we need to provide space for those types of conversations with the young people in our life.
And I would say similar to that is inspiring curiosity. How can parents inspire that want to know in their children? So giving them experiences where you can, and this doesn't have to be, I'm not thinking about a global trip around the world. I'd love to do that. But, just when you see things in everyday life, like, why did that happen? What's going on? What do you make of that? They're the sorts of conversations I have with my kids all the time. And when you have students in the classroom who are curious, you can't stop them from learning. Like they just love students. The kids love to learn. And so inspiring curiosity is something that parents can do, I think, daily to try and build that love of learning.
So if you're in the process of engaging that curiosity and you've got your kid moving along with you and excited about different options, when it comes to things like subject selection, what kind of guidance could you give them in terms of, which direction they take with the subject selection, which, in many schools is not the extent of every possible subject they could do, but maybe is narrow. Is there any guidance you could give in that space?
Yeah, look, I think it's first of all really important for parents and students to realise that what you do choose at school is not going to be much of a limitation on what you're able to do after school. So in that sense, the stakes aren't that high. You shouldn't be worrying that if I don't do this particular subject that I won't be able to enter into a university course, because very few university courses have prerequisite subjects. If you miss out on your preferred course because you don't get a high enough ATAR or whatever, there are always alternative pathways. And that's where some of these dispositions like grit and perseverance and tenacity come in, because that is what will take the student who wants to get there, will enable them to get there. But with that said, we've got to make subject choices. So I always kind of give 3 pieces of advice. I sort of say, first of all, choose things you love, things you're interested in, things you want to do, because if you want to do it, you're into it, you're going to pay attention, you're going to want to be involved, you're going to be curious. Second thing is to choose things that will align with your strengths. So what are you good at? So if you're great at maths, choose advanced maths courses, go for it. And the third thing is then what might be useful for you beyond school. If you have aspirations, and many students do, but many don't. They don't have a clue what they'd like to do. And really at 15 years of age, that's probably okay. So what might be useful? And then if I was at a fourth, I'd say, pick something that's going to challenge you, that's going to open your mind. So if you see something there that's maybe a little bit different or a little bit new or sparking that curiosity, don't be afraid to give it a go. Don't be afraid to choose something that's going to be a challenge or difficult for you.
Well, I'll pivot to you now, Dave. I've asked Dan about the subjects that might be available, but what about subjects that maybe aren't available in a school? You know, what kind of subjects could a school put in place that would be more future focused or more aligned to that kind of ideal?
Yeah, interesting. So there's a number of schools that are moving down the path of putting in place subjects around futures, foresight, strategy, futures thinking. So that's become an area of focus in the last couple of years. The other area that I'm seeing growing in representation is things like social enterprise, so doing good in the world, building businesses that are adding value in the world. So there's been a lot of movement in this sort of social enterprise space in the last couple of years. So those two areas are game on at the moment across the world.
So what final words from both of you would you like to share with our parents that are listening just about encouraging their schools and even their children in terms of this future-focused thinking?
Yeah, look, I would just love to sort of reiterate that parents play a really important role in their children's learning to inspire that love of learning and that curiosity, and to be open-minded in what school can be, because we don't want to radically change or transform our school. We love our school. Our school's got so many great things going for it, and our parents have selected this school for really good reasons. So it's not as though we want to, throw everything up in the air and start from the beginning. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is adapt our school and move it towards that in that future-facing direction. So that open-mindedness and that deep thought about what really is it that you want for your children out of their education? Is it an A? Is it the top grades? Is that really the driver? To some extent, achievement should be. But what else? What else is there? What's deeper down? And how can we support that growth and adaptation in the school?
Often, Dan, when I ask parents that question, I do a lot of parent forums around the country, and I ask that question, what do you really want for the young person in your life? I get things back like, I want them to be connected, content, fulfilled, have friends, feel like they're in relationships. So these are the sorts of responses that come back. And then you get, and I want them to accomplish and do well academically. I want that as well. But we can't lose sight of the first 4 or 5 that I listed there, because I think they're really important for young people and for the future of young people. And the other thing that I'd say is, having been to this school now on a couple of occasions, this is a really good school. Like, you've got a lot going right here. This is a very, very good school, right? So your idea of adapting and evolving from what is already really solid and in place, I think is really fundamental to the sort of work that you're going to be doing over the coming period to move more toward this sort of future orientation and considering, what else can we offer young people in their life, and what else can we offer the families of this school? So that's a really good position to take moving forward.
Well, gentlemen, this has been an insightful and informative look into some of the great ideas that make schooling more purposeful and fulfilling for our future generations of students. Thank you both for your time with us today.
No worries. Thanks, Mal. It was great.
Pleasure. It's been good to be with you. Thank you.
Your School Journey is an initiative of Emmanuel College as part of our commitment to partner with parents in shaping the learning and growth of young people. This podcast is hosted by Mal Gaylor with audio production by John Eddy and executive produced by Dan Pearson. If you found this episode valuable, we'd love you to share it with other parents, subscribe for future episodes, and leave a review. You can also connect with us for more insights into education and to explore how Emmanuel College can support your child's learning journey.